Narcissistic families. That's what we are going to discuss today in today's episode. So, narcissistic families. This is a very, very complex subject matter and one that is definitely going to take more than one video. So, with that said, we'll go ahead and just kind of jump right into the abbreviated version. Narcissistic families, they do a fantastic job of looking normal to the outside world, but inside they are usually, or more than likely, filled with self-loathing and hurt, anger, anxiety, and pain. And the impact of having a narcissistic family of origin can last a lifetime. It reveals itself in your adult relationships, behaviors, thoughts, feelings. They are plagued. These families are plagued by secrets and lies. The common theme in narcissistic family, the triangles. We all know that narcissists individually love to triangulate, and they will do it with their own children as well as everyone else. And they get to abuse boundaries. They keep everyone in set roles designated by the narcissist that everybody in the family is forced to orbit around. And they can be used to ostracize anyone who doesn't play by their rules. And families will often not communicate directly with one another, but through other family members. And this leads to secrets within the family as well as from anyone on the outside who is fed the perfect family facade until someone threatens to reveal the truth about them, and they are cut off, smeared into the ground to everyone and anyone, all to protect the family image. And no one knows who they can trust. And this is all purposely directed by the narcissist to ensure that the narcissist remains in a semblance of control. And they will also covertly send this message to everyone in the family that says you are not good enough, because they do not feel valued by anyone. Another triangle at play is the drama, or the Cartman triangle. And this is not only playing out in this scenario, but is often the basis of trauma reenactment in adulthood. And the narcissist will put the children into a triangle and to play whichever roles that are remaining. And if the narcissist has decided that they are the victim today, the spouse must be the abuser, and the narcissist will encourage the child or the children to gang up on the other parent. And if the narcissist chooses to be the rescuer, say the next day, they can accuse either the spouse or the child of other roles. And the narcissist will accuse the child of being abusive towards the spouse or another child so that they can rescue them and manipulate the relationship to win their affection so that they feel like a hero. So the narcissist only ever plays this part of either hero or villain. And unfortunately, the impact on children in these situations is that they take on all three roles in this triangle, and they learn about relationships that they are all about drama and manipulation, and that leads them to seek out abusive partners themselves in adulthood, if not become an abuser themselves. So then we're going to move on to co-narcissism, and this is kind of a bit of a fascinating subject within this narcissistic family dynamic. And all members of a narcissistic family, they can become co-narcissistic because the personality, opinions, and feelings of the narcissist are dominant among the family, and everyone is conditioned to think the same, and there is very little individualization. And within that narcissistic family, it is very, very cult-like, and anyone who doesn't conform is seen as an outsider and is cut off, and that person is blamed and vilified for literally everything. The whole family gathers behind the narcissist as that person is vilified and blamed. And as adults, members struggle with their own identity and often seek validation from the outside, from others, and can be people pleasers. So in these dynamics, we can often see fabricated illnesses, or kind of like a Munchausen or Munchausen by proxy type situation. And many narcissists, they will either use their own illness, in quotation marks, or their children's illness, in quotation marks, to control public perception of them, usually on social media. And they can ensure that they look like a martyr, and they create a codependency amongst family members and use guilt to control everyone. And being mislabeled as having an illness is extremely, extremely confusing for a child who feels fine, but is constantly being told that they are X, Y, and Z. And it also teaches them that deception and manipulation can get you sympathy and attention, which is a foundation for narcissistic behavior in adulthood. And so we move on to this infantile. Okay, independence causes a great amount of anxiety for narcissists because it means freedom, and freedom of thought, freedom of location, and they cannot cope with anybody having any of that. And they seek to keep their children young, and young enough to need them, but young enough to be easily controlled. And the narcissist refuses to let the children grow up, and natural child development is stunted, and a codependency is usually created. So to the outside world, this can look like a close family bond, but what it really is some very serious enmeshment and a lack of psychological boundaries between parent and child, where a role reversal has taken place. So we're going to move on to parentification. And narcissists, they have absolutely no understanding of child development. So they will expect their children to do things which they are simply not capable of doing, usually due to their age or their maturity level. And narcissistic parents will criticize their children for not doing what they want them to do, even though they do not have the capacity to do so, which leaves these kids feeling like they are a failure and that they let their parents down in yet another way. So they will expect these kids to take care of them, and it may be physically, but it is usually emotionally. Everyone in the family has responsibility for managing the narcissist's emotions, but for very young children, this impacts brain development, especially around the emotional processing, because the children learn about emotions from their parents, helping them to understand and process them. But with narcissists, it is the child who has to help the parent. So again, this is where we see that enmeshment. We have generational trauma. Trauma gets passed down it's in our DNA from generation to generation to generation until somebody stands up, decides to do the work and heal the wounds. And we learn how to interact, have relationships, view ourselves and the world from our very early experiences. And life with a narcissistic parent means the overriding theme of that person's life is trauma. And trauma creates long-term damage to the brain. And this impacts how we interact with the world as a whole. So if you grow up seeing power and control and manipulation, you tend to attract those same types of relationships as adults. And narcissists, however, they struggle to accept that there is anything wrong with them, as it would trigger their sense of inadequacy and lead to a complete dysregulation into anxiety. So they carry on as if everything is fine and everyone else is the problem, passing this mentality down to their children and refusing the children access to counseling, for example. Narcissistic families have no boundaries. There is no privacy, no respect, no empathy. It is a dynamic of power and control, and this is a dangerous, dangerous cocktail. Emotional and physical incest occurs due to the combination of both of these. Co-narcissism is in many ways emotional incest, but it blurs the boundaries between parent and child as the reversal of the roles, with the child becoming the carer for the parent. They share details about the relationship which a child should not be privy to, and they know about court and adult issues that have been discussed, and this creates an alliance which leads to parental alienation. And sadly, it does not end there for many children, as the narcissistic parent expects them to share every single detail, the children to share every single detail of their life as well. And they walk in their bedrooms without knocking, read their diaries without permission, talk to their friends like they are their best friends, ask them intimate questions about their sex lives. This can lead to physical incest. And I know this is probably a trigger, but a child of a narcissist has learned not to refuse the demands of a narcissistic parent, either to prevent this dysregulation into rage because they are made to feel guilty and in the wrong for doing so. So say a sexual advance when all of your other boundaries have been violated or never even implemented is not really a big step. And many children of narcissists fall in love with their parents, and this is encouraged as part of child development. Involves the electro and oedipus complex. This can also the Madonna horror complex. where the children become attracted to the parent of the opposite sex. And so children whose development is not supported with the parentification, and it is interrupted by trauma that can remain in this state. So narcissists, they rely on being the center of attention. So this feeds the idea of them being special and that grandiose sense of self. And their lack of empathy, they see nothing wrong with what they are doing and genuinely believe that whatever they do and whatever they say is right. And so societal and moral norms do not apply to them. Any child who experiences this type of relationship, regardless of how extreme it could get, if it's father to son, father to daughter, mother to son, mother to daughter, they will grow up experiencing a very, very deep and profound sense of toxic shame, and they will struggle to have adult relationships because of the disgust they feel about some of their experiences as children. And it can lead to a very deep feeling of loneliness and isolation and a lot of suicidal ideation. And it is important to understand that if you are a victim, even if you enjoyed it and felt love for your parents, you were taken advantage of, and support is available to you. So please do not keep this bottled up. I'm aware that this is a very heavy topic to cover, but it is important that we acknowledge what a lot of children have gone through and are currently going through, and the risk that is associated with narcissistic parents. And if you are concerned that a child is being sexually, emotionally, or physically abused, please immediately find support. My name is Sara Ann Brown, and this is Narcissistic Abuse 101.